This method, independent voices in transnational curating and writing, featuring Hajra, Haider, Karrar, and Hajra, Karrar, Haider. What's wrong with me? Haider, Karrar. Yahi sahi ab. Aise hi hoga. This is going to be what this is. And Saira, Ansari. Thank you both for joining us. Thank you all for being here. I would like to now introduce the panelists. Hajra Haider Karrar is a curator and writer invested in articulating questions that destabilize and reconfigure colonial and capital paradigms underlying knowledge production by working through ancestral and effective epistemes. She is curator at Savvy Contemporary, the laboratory of form ideas, Berlin, and the guest curator for Columbuscope Edition 9, 2026, the first Pakistani seminal. Formerly, she was the chief curator of the IVS Gallery and Faculty of Visual Arts at the Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture, Karachi, and a core member of the Tentative Collective. Since joining Savvy Contemporaries in summer 2021, she has led curated the multi-chapter research project Unraveling the Underdevelopment Complex 2021-24, Historical Children, Lullabies from Wounds to Wonder 2024-2025, the year-long participatory project How Will You Ascertain Time 2022, and The Wind in Your Body is Just Visiting, Your Breath Will Soon Be Thunder by Pallavi Paul for the Forum Expanded Berlinale 2022. She was a co-curator for Indigo Waves and Other Stories Re-Navigating the Afrasian Sea and Notions of Diaspora 2022-2024 and Enigma number 59, Roman, a retrospective by Billy Joka for the Berlin Art Week 2021. Amongst previous significant curatorial projects, as if this wasn't enough, Karrar has initiated the ongoing discursive project Who Gets to Talk About Whom? Collective Thinking and Its Politics in the Decolonial Turn in 2018. She has already curated a trilogy of survey exhibitions, Look at the City from Here, featuring Bani Ahmadi, Risham Said, Farida Batul in 2016 at the An Art Space and Museum in Karachi in 2016. Karrar's curatorial and collaborative projects have been featured at cultural institutions and biennales including Tate Research Center, Center Asia, London 2018, Moscow Museum of Modern Art, Moscow 2014, Center Pompidou, Paris 2017, Manchester Art Gallery, Manchester 2016-17, Yarat Contemporary Art Space, Baku, Akademie der Kunst, Berlin, Lahore Biennale, the second one, and Moscow Biennale for Young Art, 5th International Biennale for Contemporary Art, Azerbaijan, and Kochi Museumist Biennale 2022. She was a curatorial fellow of the ITP 2014 program at the British Museum and the recipient of the ISAB DARD Research Fellowship at Yale University from 2019 to 2020. She has also edited multiple publications, and her writings on artistic practice and visual and media cultures are regularly published in journals, monographs, and publications. Hajra Haider Karrar. And so, Saira Ansari is an independent writer and editor who uses creative non-fiction and publishing to explore art practice, alternative histories, and the real and imagined peripheries of South Asia and the Arabian Gulf. For 2 decades, she has collaborated with institutions, artists, and writers from the Middle East, Iran, South Asia, and Brazil, and continues to consult on publishing projects for artist-led initiatives. Editorial projects include monographs on Bani Abadi in 2022, Zubeda Agha Foundation 2024, Khalil Rabah Sharjah Art Foundation 2025, Sahand Hasmiya Black Dog in 2025, Readers Lala Rukh Rupak 2017, Art in the Age of Anxiety, Sharjah Art Foundation 2020, and Prince Faisal bin Fahad Art Hall, The Legacy of a Saudi Art Space in 2024. And amongst all of this, children's books on pioneering Arab artists, amongst others, of course. Previously, Ansari worked at Sharjah Art Foundation, where she managed publications and co-programmed the first 3 editions of Focal Point Art Book Fair 2018 to 2020, a critical platform for independent publishing. More recently, she has served as Director of Research and Publications at MISC Art Institute in Riyadh, where she established the bilingual department and organized the annual art book fair at MISC Art Week. Along with her institutional roles, Ansari develops long-term independent projects. Her ongoing work on the Pakistani modernist Zubaida Agha spans archives, publishing and historiography, including the Zubaida Agha Archive at Asia Art Archive, initiated through the Lahore Biennale Foundation Research Fellowship in 2016. She is the co-editor of The Importance of Staying Quiet 2014, and then from 2025 to 26, an exhibition format project enlarging minimal and abstract vocabularies in Pakistani art. Welcome, Saira Ansari. I also want to note that I wanted to use the longest introduction to them because they are speaking about their work in Pakistan for the first time, and I think many people are not aware of the breadth and the depth of the work that they have done. Like, they're so young and they've just been everywhere all at once, and so we are really lucky and fortunate to have both of you who are such great members of the art community. You're so collaborative, you're wonderful people, and I think really looking forward to seeing you and hearing you speak about your work. And I'd love to start with Hajra. Hajra is going to speak about her work first. We're going to start with a small little presentation. All right. Okay. Yeah, I'm a bit speechless right now. Doesn't happen often when I'm on stage, but yeah, I just would like to share how special this moment is to be here and to share space with such wonderful people and who are very dear friends and fellow thinkers, and also to have mentors and friends and peers and in the audience, and so it's really, you know, very special indeed. I'm not going to take too long. It's also a short time, and so I think we shouldn't run yet. I'll change it myself. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm just going to share a couple of projects with you today that I feel hold a lot of meaning for me, but also they're very deeply connected to the context on the ground. Because, and you know, these are projects that I've done in Pakistan, and I think this is very much, you know, a process of my practice and how it has developed, and of course, then I can also share further, if there's time, about what I'm doing in Berlin. But yeah, for now, I'm going to focus on two projects from 2016 and 18. Which I think not many people know about, but just to give you more of an idea, it was very much thinking within my practice. I've been very much thinking of the exhibitionary, the limits of it and the potentials of it, and how to continue expanding these ideas, and also how we think, you know, because a lot of the work that I have been engaging in is also thinking of, you know, constantly pushing boundaries and also kind of demystifying categorizations, which I feel is so important because a lot of times these, they become, you know, very constraining. So this project about time took place in 2016, and this was part of the International Theatre and Music Festival at Napa. And it was one of those, yeah, I really miss those moments where I used to do things like these.
and which were also possible. And I remember when I reached out to NAPA and I said, oh, I want to propose a project, and they were like, what? And also when I had shared it with the artists as well and invited them for this prompt, and they were like, what do you mean? But the idea behind it was very much looking at the overlaps and differences between art and theatre, and how it is differentiated so much. Meanwhile, there are so many blurred boundaries that overlap, but also how what I really wanted to explore was very much the limits of time within this, but also, you know, the artist thinking. So what I, like, you know, thinking within a concise space which lasts for a certain period of time, or a number of days, because in the exhibition the space becomes quite a central and a very core aspect. So what happens if we take the space out of it and it is just for a very limited number of times? So there were many different aspects that were coming in into this, which was first of all this idea that you have a time limit of 17 minutes of a very active and moving installation, which is, you know, like working with sound, projection, or objects. And this is a space, like each artist had like 10 minutes or so, in which they transmit a certain idea. And I think the most unnerving part about it is that your audience is right in front of you, and there is an instant reaction that can be got at that moment. And that reaction is also, you know, like, and the audience is also viewing it simultaneously, like collective, it's a collective experience. So how does that work, and what, you know, like, how can we push ideas within this realm and continue to challenge ourselves and continue to, you know, think through these binds that contain us, but also expand further. And just to share with you, unfortunately, because of course it was a dark space and the pictures did not come out so well, but I would love to share that what did happen was that after that, for a lot of plays at Napa, we went and saw that the things that we had introduced were being used. And, you know, because we had used projections and we had used, you know, like multiple layers of, you know, like textiles to create, you know, certain kind of divisions. And of course, the theatre mindset is very much there. They use all of these things, but in a very different manner. So it was also interesting to see how it wasn't just pushing it one way, but there were things being picked up on both sides. So this was just something that I wanted to share with you all. And the next I would like to, okay, now it's not working. Yeah, so this is a project which I feel has came at a point in my practice when I was also thinking of once again of the exhibitionary, but also thinking of what now. And by this time I'd done a lot of work, and I was just thinking, I was a bit dissatisfied with, you know, just exhibition making. In that way, I'd done lots of experiments and whatnot, but what I was really missing at this point was a space of dialogue. And where is that point? Like, of course, there is the communication with the artist, and where you are developing a project together, where you do an exhibition together, but where is that point of interaction where you engage with those who come to consume, or to, like, you know, who interact with this work? And I felt like I was not getting the feedback that I needed to also see how things are landing. Like, I have thought of something, the artist has thought of something, we work together, we feel, okay, it works, but does it work for the person who comes to see it? Also, a very big question by this time was also how do we have difficult conversations? How do we ask each other questions where it doesn't end up one person being defensive? How can we create a constructive and generative space where we could actually use it as a moment of, bringing ideas together and expanding them, and talking about, how do we talk about problem solving, or how do we talk about something not working? And of course, my interaction with artists has been closer in this instance because, of course, like speaking about their works and all, and I had often noticed that whenever there was a certain defensiveness that would arrive if, a question was asked that they were not comfortable answering, or something that had not been resolved, which I felt deeply, because I feel like, I believe, not just feel, but I believe that art making is not, or any creative endeavor is not a solitary, it's not meant to be a solitary experience, because everything that we do is so much informed by who we are, where we are, but also the interactions that we have in the everyday. So this was very much, thinking of these ideas, and also thinking of the kind of education we are receiving, the kind of literature, and this is not just university, but also as practitioners. Of course, our dependency has very much been on Western academia, but also thinking of certain ideas and how do they apply to us, like what do they mean for us. So of course, decoloniality has been really a major term, which I feel is a world on its own, and constantly keeps shifting and evolving, and of course this is something that I continue to work on, but I think at this point it was also very much thinking of how does it translate for us? Like, what does decoloniality mean for a post-colonial nation? What is our reading of it? And this is also, noticing certain trends, which I myself was part of a collective, an artistic collective, the Tentative Collective, for some time, and I'd also, been experiencing a lot of other collaborations, and it was very interesting to think that this was also something that I wanted to bring to the fore, that what are those moments when people come together, and what is that point where you think of letting go of authorship, sole authorship, which is a very big thing, of course, in a very commercially oriented art world. What does it mean to share and co-author things, but also very much, there are multiple aspects, but I think it's very important to share that. But I think another very important aspect that came into it was to think of the ethical and moral considerations, because often there's too much, and this is also, it's informed from many different conversations that I had with artists as well, where this idea of artistic freedom is the best scapegoat to say, oh, we can go and do anything. And to also question that, when you put something out in the public realm, and it is something that has been authored by you, what kind of responsibilities lie on the artist, and what are the considerations that are taken into consideration, that have been there in the making, but also especially this was a very important thought in working with communities when you work outside, and I think that's so these were a lot of critical questions that were there. Also, once again, art as not solitary, but art as interdisciplinary, and what does that mean? What does strategy sharing, and what is having a common approach mean, and what does, you know, like sharing a space with people from this other disciplines, like really like it was a space to think together. So basically what happened, and I'll just share can you please, yeah. So this was, okay, we can go to the next one, the spaces. So it was very, coming from very basic ideas, because once again, you know, like art making is knowledge production. And once again, at the base of knowledge production come very basic ideas: who, what, how, when, and for whom, you know. And I think these are core questions that are key to anything that we do. And I think the more specific your question is, the more specific the answer you're going to get. So how do we find the right questions? How do we, because I think that's the first step, like how do we get to that point? What you see here is a program. So the exhibition was lasted a month. This was also the first time I had a team that I was working with. I had, Saira was my assistant curator. I had a fantastic, a young intern who was working with us, and Karrar was doing our design and communications. It was quite a full program that we had. Like this was just 1 week, and you know, public programming around exhibitions is not very common here. But this was the core of the exhibition. So what the exhibition contained was the projects by collectives or moments or collaborations that had taken place. There were 9 different examples that I had invited. And also with the works were detailed interviews with them, thinking of, you know, the considerations that were in place when they started the project, and also the reflections in the aftermath. And also very much about the decision making. What was the process of working together? What were the ethics? What were the considerations in place? And then, so the exhibition basically became the backdrop for the discursive sessions that took place. And I still remember, with the team, we were 4 people, and I said to them, you know, it's very difficult to get people to commit for just even one conversation. To get them to commit to something like this is, you know, really too ambitious. I remember when I was discussing about this project with some people, they were like, this is too much. But I was just really, I think it was so heartwarming, and also in some ways really a moment of you know, thinking that, oh, I'm not alone in this, when each time it was house full. And interestingly, it wasn't art students or people from the art world were the least in these households. But also people coming from different disciplines who were so interested, and who were also thinking of how they also have a space and they also can, you know, come and share in this. So each session, which was really thinking through different levels of practice, starting like the peer sessions were very much thinking of thinking with you know, young practitioners, and the work sessions were with mid-career practitioners, which really, you know, helped show how ideas, you know, evolve and then get further complicated, and how do we think through them. So these were all roundtable sessions, and it is like, and yeah, you can go forward, and this is also, you know, like, so each week was a different theme that we were focusing on. This was the last one, which was thinking of vernacular forms of representation. There's a website of it, you can go have a, like, you can look more on it. But it was really, you know, thinking of, and the reason for the website was also like, how do we trace our thoughts? How can we keep a track of this evolution, which is so, so important. Like, everything cannot be a finished product. It should not be. So I think I'm going to end here because इसके बाद वाला क्या इसके बाद आप okay they've left from there.
Hi, excuse me, can you change
Okay,
slide?
yeah, sorry. एक पीछे जाइएगा जरा. So this was yeah, this was some of the sessions, pictures from some of the sessions. But I think, are we out of time or can I quickly?
Yes, you may quickly, because we have not much to discuss,
Okay.
but I would like you to show it, please. Please, Hajra, show it.
I think so the next slide, because I thought I might not have time to discuss another project, and of course what my engagements with Sari, this is Sari Contemporary, and what my engagements with Sari are, like what we do is extensive and really goes into multiple different realms. So I'm not going to get into that, but I think I just want to share, because from the ideas that I just previously discussed, I think it becomes very important to also hear what this space is and how it came into being, because so Sari came into being in 2009, and it was founded by Bonaventure and Dikung, and it really came from this need of, you know, at that point in Berlin, Ansari was the first place that was speaking about the ideas that I'm going to share in this way, that there were two categories. So the art from the West was, of course, all defined where it was coming from, but anything that came from the non-West was just non-West, and that is how far it went, and everything was clumped together. So how do we, and you know, like the interesting part about this is, and also the scary part about categorizations, because they flatten subjectivities. And what happens with that is that the specifically the richness of cultures that this non-West holds is just, you know, mind-blowing to another level. And what does it mean? Because of course the fabric of the city, Berlin, is composed of these people, and they make it what it is today. So, and everything, like the culture capital that the country is really, you know, prides itself upon and, you know, builds this culture capital is through these people. So this was very much, you know, once again with these dissatisfactions of where, like, we need to create our own platform to house voices that continue to be amongst us, but also to very much, so to really deconstruct and challenge these notions of the West and non-West, but also thinking through the everyday aggressions and oppressions that are felt and experienced by people. And the idea of Sari was to also, once again, coming back to our cultures, was to think of, like, so it's not just an exhibition space, it is there, but it's a discursive space, it's an eating and drinking place. It's very much the foundations of Sari are built on radical hospitality and conviviality, because the idea is that it is over food and drink that the best ideas are shared, because that is when you open up to someone else, and that is how someone else opens up to you. So this is, you know, like this generosity is then, you know, shared intellectually. So these are very much the idea, and of course, like, it's very research oriented. We have exhibitions, we have, you know, we have so many things. We have a radio program, we have publications, we have vinyls, we have been doing, you know, like, our Sari Doc, which is our library, which collects material from all over the world. It's not just a print library, it is an audio visual, because once again, really stretching the limits of what is, you know, how, you know, acknowledging different forms of knowledge production that come from, like, also from food. And one thing that we've been very lucky with is that we have also some journals in our collection that are do not have ceased to exist now, which have been key and crucial to different moments in time. And It's also one of those very special and unique places that is not just doing the work and showing it in the diversity of the artists, but our team reflects that. So we are from 15 different countries across the world. And very much working on the global south, and of course there's a focus on Africa, but it is also in connection. And the last point that I would really like to share as well, and of course a very, very intense public program, and which also has multiple different layers and kinds of engagements. But also a very important last point that I would like to share is that our activities are not limited to the physical space that we are. The idea is very much to grow together with our networks and to continue growing them on the ground. And once again, so the knowledge sharing is not limited to Berlin, to Germany, but for almost for 90% of our projects, we are often working somewhere else in the world where we have chapters on the ground. And this is also not us going and doing something. This is often like working with initiatives that have been working on the ground, and also having a chance to engage and learn from them. So they take the center stage, and we support and facilitate. So it's also a way of channeling resources, which are not just financial. They come in many different ways. And this is also one of the reasons why we continue to do what we do and are able to do that. So it couldn't have been done without. So this is just a very brief, a brief intro into who we are, so you can kind of imagine the kind of projects that are taking place.
My goodness, thank you so much, Hajra. That is such a breadth of work. So it was so great to hear even just these two projects and your work at Saira. Saira and Ansari, we would love to hear from you about your work, and then we will. Right.
I'm going to see if this works.
दूसरी वाली please लगा दीजिएगा. Thank you.
हाँ जनाब, दूसरी भी लगा दें please. Before they put it on, thank you so much everybody for joining. It's so nice to see a lot of friends and teachers and some students who are in the audience. It's really nice to be able to speak on this platform. और इस screen पे कुछ नज़र नहीं आएगा, so I really apologize about that. So because I saw that the screen was a bit pixelated yesterday, I went really chaotic with my presentation, because that's who I am. So I assume that a lot of people who know me know what I do, but I still get this question from a lot of friends, what do you do? Because I did my bachelor's in painting from NCA 100 years ago, and then writing was a part of it at that time also, but nobody ever really connected it to my painting practice. So tab bhi ye conversation hui ki just put the writing in your portfolio. And so 21 years ago I put my writing in my portfolio and didn't show it. Ended up working in the Human Rights Commission with Haider, who's such an incredible journalist and activist, and started working on research and publications. And I always wanted to write because I grew up in a publishing household where translation and publishing happened. Very progressive, left-wing, parades, hoot boy, muscle books. And so my mentor and friend, the late Lala Rukh, asked me to come back to the master's program at NCA. And that's when I started looking at critical thinking. I was a very angry young person. I was very upset with institutions. I didn't know how to articulate it, so I was very rude. I had a project that was nicknamed the Asshole Project. I'm sorry, this is being recorded, but it's true. It was called the SA Project, Saira Ansari Project. But I was just talking about a lot of things that I was uncomfortable about. But slowly and gradually, I was moving into writing more, and then I left the country. I moved to Brazil, where I was born, and it's very random, but Pakistanis are everywhere in the world. You can't help it. And I started working as an arts correspondent in an incredible Latin American scene that I had never studied about. Never. That was not something that we knew. And I was getting to interview these people because I was the only English correspondent for the only English paper. So I'm sitting with these incredible people who are the pioneers of video art and installation and thinking I don't know anything. That was a very pivotal point. The second was that I saw an incredible Indian exhibition at an institution in Rio. Very, very big, very beautifully curated. And I realized that these conversations can happen internationally in the global south per se, so not in the museums that we connect with when we think about South Asia. After that, I moved to the Middle East, and the Gulf is where I work. And so when people ask me, so this is a bit of a history, is that I write and I research and I work in various capacities in publishing as an editor, as a managing editor, as a therapist for a lot of artists. And please excuse the little bukan over here. So this is just a screen grab from my website on all the publications that I've worked on in the last couple of years. And I guess which is why Maliha really wanted me to talk about it, because a lot of people don't know I have worked on all of these books. And so I've grabbed some of these copies from Nashina's house because she has a lot of my books, thank you Nashina, to bring them here so that you can peruse through them later. It's really sad you can't find them in libraries here and you can't purchase them here because nobody keeps them. I've tried giving them to libraries, I've talked to bookshops, so maybe you guys can put some pressure, that would be amazing. And so just a few projects that I've listed here, my most recent ones are the first, and I'm going to quickly go through them because I know we're limited on time, so I'm going to go through a few books and research projects and say a lot of random stuff in the middle, so please excuse me. The first one is a book that just very recently came out, who is this Iranian artist that I've been working with the last 10 years, and looking at the idea of what it means to be Iranian. So I think a lot of us can connect to that when we're South Asians abroad. I don't know what that means. Somehow when people meet me, I'm supposed to represent all of Pakistan and India and Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, and I don't know how to do that because I barely represent all of Punjab, let alone Pakistan. And so when Iranian art is looked at, it's often looked at in the lens of Islamic art, which is okay academically when you're looking at architecture and the nuances inside, but when you're going to an international platform, it's so flattening. And so we started exploring this book, and I'll talk about it a little later on. Actually, let me just move on and I'll talk about that later. Two important books that I have here is this blue book in the middle, Bani Abadi, which is the first monograph that I worked on. And the second one is Khalil Rabba, which is this tome that you can really break someone's head with. It's the first monograph on the incredibly important seminal Palestinian artist who is a dear friend. And the reason I put these books together to show people like Bani, people like Khalil, people like Sahan from Iran are incredible people, and they get their monographs at a much later stage in life. And what does that mean to have a very serious book? And I don't think I can ever encapsulate any of that in this brief introduction, but maybe you can, मुझसे बाद में आके बातें करने में बहुत खुशी से बात कर लूँगी. And the Zubaida Agha book, which is my new baby. Just come out in French, even though I don't write French or read French, but I'm happy to pretend that I wrote it in French. Who's a Pakistani modernist who I am a great niece of, and who kind of disappeared from Pakistani art history, and that's been, as a researcher and a writer, and now in publishing, been an area that's very close to my heart. I'm kind of all over the place, guys. I'm just so excited to talk about these books. Yes, so Zubaida Agha is, I'm moving between writing and research and archives because my practice has a lot to do with beyond writing about art, right? So when people think about art writing, they think about an object or an exhibition. That's not what I do. I write about the instances and the histories and the context and the practices within which exhibitions happen and which art is made, and which allows people to do good things and bad things and mediocre things. And so working with archives allows you that really, really incredible richness and flatness, because you can put really horrible things next to really good things and talk about context. So Zubaida Agha work in the last 12 years has now resulted in an archive at Asia Art Archive in Hong Kong that you can reach online and get in touch with me if you want more, a publication with the Chakramarti Foundation, and now work reaching out into institutions internationally who are finally beginning to recognize an important Pakistani modernist who really set up the first art gallery in the country, who was an important part of the institutional process, who donated 200 works to the national collection and not credited anywhere. And so I have a lot of rage. And so a lot of my archiving and writing comes from rage and passion and rage and passion. And I think 10 years ago it made me a bit, like I said, a bit of an asshole, and now it's just made me do less of that and more of let's just do the work. If nobody else is doing it, stop complaining and do the work. Quickly, this is Bani's book, and this is only to, I'm just showing this for my practice as working with artists as an editor and a managing editor and independently publishing. Bani is a really well-known artist who works with, you know, kind of the nationalism and the civic absurdities that, you know, exist in Pakistan. And how do you put that practice into a book when so much of it is film and photography? Bani is the kind of person who's very involved in their books. So now, having worked with over 57 artists in the last 12 years, I've realized that any time an artist, whether they're 20 or 50 or 90, when they do their first book, they all get very excited. And so, like I said, I needed to be a therapist because you have to really rein in the concept. But Bani was not that person. Bani knows what she's doing with every exhibition, with every conversation, and that was such a joy. And so the collaborative way this book came about, and I want to show you, is this very strange format because she works with film. The entire, and film and photography, the entire book refuses to have installations of any of the films. Because what do you do when you show people a photograph of installation? What are they going to understand about that film? Really, they can go online and see that film or snippets of it or read press. So the book really, and now obviously I won't find that page, breaks up her films into those frames, exactly the format of that video, and moves second by second through those frames so that you can experience maybe snippets of the film and understand what that means. And here our collaboration is looking into what that means when you show film in print. And that's a really incredible way of looking at a book. So now we're not talking about the seminal artist and the practice and we're talking about the art and how one experiences it. And so this is a really dear project. And why the cover is really special is somehow I end up working with artists who don't want their name on the cover or their faces. And while I love it, distributors and publishers want to shoot me because nobody buys a book when they can't read the name or the faces. But I've been really lucky to work with people like Bani or Sahand or Fahad Barki who really hate being on social media and press, and yet they do the work. And so my job is to make sure they're represented in a way that you can still find out about them, but they don't have to sell their soul to be, you know, some kind of promotion junkie, which is not wrong because I know that needs to be done too, but there needs to be space for people who can't do that or don't want to do that. Sahan we've talked about, so I'll move on. No worries, come on remote, yes. Khalil is very important to me because part of my work identity has become living and working in the Gulf and working in the Manasa region, which is the Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia. That started with my experience working with a commercial gallery that represented artists across this region, and then moving into an institutional framework, which is the Sharjah Art Foundation, which is probably one of the most brilliant platforms to bring these voices around. And I have, living in Sharjah, worked very extensively with Sudanese and Palestinian colleagues. And it is impossible not to care at a visceral level when your colleague is losing 13 family members in Gaza or losing cousins to famine in Khartoum, and, or, you know, and so you talk about these things and you make sure that your passion translates into projects that mean something, that are important. But again, what does that mean for an artist who is ridiculously hilarious and who fakes institutions. So the Palestinian Museum of National History and Humankind is a fake museum, because how do you do museums under oppression and conflict? You just make up a fake museum and a collection and a website, and you do press releases and people believe it's there. But it is such interesting commentary, and it brings me back to how Bani approaches this. Humor is such a tool. And so maybe come and have a look at this book later and see what this big tome is talking about, which doesn't feel like the news and which doesn't feel very what you hear and read about Palestine. And a lot of my colleagues are Christian Palestinians. And so the work really takes on a layer that I was not familiar with, having grown up in Pakistan and being, the Palestinian lovers that we are. So again, as a writer and an editor, my rage and passion has become about platforming voices. And living in the Gulf, it means that I think beyond myself as a Pakistani and my responsibility to people that I've now grown up with in the last 12 years. Lala, my love. Lala is everybody's favorite, but Lala was not introduced to me through art. When I was very little, my mother went through a messy divorce and I was introduced to WAF and her Sigiriya prints at one of the WAF members. When I was in my A-levels, I decided I was a socialist, so I stopped drinking Pepsi and McDonald's, and I now carry a MacBook and I live in Dubai, so I don't know how to reconcile this. But Lala kind of picked up on that and was part of my Human Rights Commission journey for many years. We were in protest, and our relationship was beyond art. So when she was commissioned, we kept in touch for many, many other things, and art, of course. When she was commissioned for the Rupak project for Documenta, Lala remembered that I trained as a classical dancer under Maharaj Kathak for 10 years. And she wanted me to write about this work. I don't know much about Eastern classical music, and I'm wholly unequipped to write about it as an essay for Documenta. And she said, but you danced to it, and your body responded to it viscerally. That's what writing should be about. That's what I want people to feel when they read the text. And so that work traveled. If anybody wants copies, I'm happy to bring it to Pakistan next time free of cost and give it to people, because I've tried giving it, people don't take it, I don't know why. And so there are different essays, and I can always link them later. I just don't want to, take so much time. And finally, beyond writing and editing and publishing, my biggest love affairs has been independent art book fairs that have become something that I've been very deeply entrenched with. So there's a few artists here, I don't know who are familiar with Focal Point Art Book Fair, which was the first of its kind independent art book fair in the Manasa region, or let's take out South Asia and Africa, Middle Eastern region, which was put up by Sharjah Art Foundation, and I was the co-organizer and mother for the first 3 editions. And the kind of work that happened on these platforms, where we had really wonderful independent publishers who have their audiences and who do well, but they don't have the networks to be introduced to newer regionals and localities. We're able to meet, exchange, build projects. Indian publisher platforms ended up taking Pakistani publishers with them, and vice versa, because post-Modi, it's been a nightmare to get art publications across. And most recently, after those 3 editions, I did 2 in Saudi Arabia and Riyadh, which was the first 2 art book fairs that were ever done in that city. Well, paperback happened later. And a lot of people ask me about working in Riyadh, which I have not talked about today, and again, there's not time, or maybe later. And they asked me how I felt about political censorship. And I really want to talk to them about what you can really say in the US now, or in the UK, or in Germany. And so it's really, it moves from place to place. But what I was able to do was, I wanted to use my platforms to center voices that were important to me. So at an art book fair, I ended up bringing a Palestinian publisher who just brought Wassam Kanafani text, which is a left-wing progressive text. The booth sold out in 2 days. The power of publishing and building communities is incredible. It is not about the big 5. It's not about international bestseller lists. It's not about being read by everyone. It's about connecting to the few people who want to talk to you. And that's what my practice is.
Fantastic. Thank you both for being here. It's been up to session for me, and I'm going to go upar ja sakti. Well, we're going to ignore that and we're going to go on a little longer because we have these two girls and we are just going to take a little more time. So I will then rush through my questions for you, which are, and I'm going to just kind of like make them a little composite so that we can perhaps answer them collectively. And that is that this is an incredible, like just a glimpse, it's a drop, but it also shows us an arc. It shows us, it shows us the arc, and it shows us a kind of like a glimpse into how your mind works, how your positionality. My question is that so Hajra lived in Karachi when you moved to Berlin. Saira, you lived in Lahore before you moved to Brazil and then to the UAE. What shifted when you made that kind of, that physical, geographical change, and you moved countries, continents? And what shifted, what jarred, and what, like, did you have to rethink things, or did you learn things in terms of how you were methodically approaching your practice? And like, what do you feel like shifted in the way that you approached your practices or your craft? What opened up in this shift that you made? And also, within all of this, could you also touch upon things that were perhaps made you uncomfortable? Were there points of censorship that you had to work with? Or like you were saying, the flattening of one's experiences because you are women of color? So, over to you guys.
All right, I guess I'm going first. There's good and bad things. So the community that I found in the UAE was something that I was not aware of, because when I was moving there, everybody has this idea of concrete and malls, and whereas there's generations of people, families living there who have practices in publishing and music and performance and theater and writing. So that was amazing. Having said that, in publishing in that region, there are white people and there are Arabic people. In art. Being a Pakistani woman in that field was not easy. It started by people saying to my face, "You're non-native English speaker." And if this was not being recorded, I would have told you what I said to them. It was very colorful. Because that was jarring. What does it mean to be a non-native English speaker? I spoke better than them. I wrote better than them. I definitely edited it better than them. I just was not white, which was their land. And by white, by the way, this is not English-speaking countries. You could just be white and that was fine. I struggled with that in Saudi this time. And I'm reticent to say that a lot of times because there were very, very good things that happened there with the younger people who are incredible. But the old guard was jarring. In this day and age, to sit at a platform where you're a director setting up a research department at an institute and be questioned by somebody who has no publishing experience and at least 15 years younger than you because you're a brown woman, I really didn't think that happened in this day and age. It just makes me, like I said, 10, 20 years ago, it just made me angry. Now it just makes me more passionate to like, I am going to claim this space. So.
Yeah, I think there's so many aspects to this question also. I think I'll try to keep it very brief, but I think there are two things. So first of all, it's your own lens, where you're like, where you are here and everything around it exists, and then it's a reference. And shifting to another place is very much like, this is the world and you are just a part of it, you know, so there's the massive shift there. But I think like there are also what has been jarring in some ways, and of course these are things you know, but to experience them, and you only experience them when you live them, is very different because to go from a post-colonial nation where your concerns and where your politics and all the work that you do, a lack of infrastructure, a way of creating and making space, and then to go and sit in the seat of empire where there are existing infrastructures, but you do the work, are also, you know, spaces that you navigate. And it's also interesting because now we use South Asia so much. South Asia as a term has been coined internationally. It's not something that comes from here. And that is once again also very interesting to think about how, you know, so much of our understandings, our perceptions, everything, like it really is, somehow your lens becomes a bit clear into the larger workings of things and how an image projection, because I'm also living in Germany. I'm also like, because everyone, like this perception that everyone has that, oh, efficiency, that's the biggest joke ever. But also, that makes you realize that, hold on a second, so now I know what has been happening. So this is all about, oh, these people from the South, they are lazy, that's why they did not get anywhere. And we hardworking people, we are, but it's also, this is obviously a big generalization that I'm sharing, but it's also very much talking about general perceptions and how they can come about. So I think like something that has been spoken about a lot in the sessions yesterday and today also is very much, you have to tell your story, because no one else is going to do that. And if anything, they're actually going to co-opt it. And then good luck to you then. So yes, so the effort to continue making space, but also on the more positive side, and I have been very lucky and very privileged because I went, and as soon as I moved to Berlin, I was invited by Bonaventure to join Savvy, and I think that was the softest and gentlest landing that could have been. Because I think because Saira, also what you shared, I think it's very important to note that to work in a place where you don't have to negotiate your politics is a privilege.
Yeah.
Because if you have to start from there, where your politics are in conflict with what the institution is doing, then your work is 100 times way more difficult. Your struggle is another. And the other thing I just want to share was what really, really struck me was how ignorant, and I guess this is everywhere in a majority, but also in these, like once again, a colonial country that has gone and sat and, you know, really extracted and continues to extract all over, the lack of knowledge on other subjectivities and their experiences and the difficulties, like the everyday struggles, is shocking. And that is why, like, you go into a space, and that's why, once again, it's a blessing where I am, because when I go and share an experience from the city or from the country, and the other people say, oh yeah, I know what you mean. And then also to be humbled within that, because the hierarchy of color and how prevalent that is, when my African colleagues say that, oh, I get checked by the police each time. And then you suddenly realize, oh, you know, there are experiences that are way worse than mine, right? But also, I think on the positive end, the best part about it is, like, first has been to be able, which is in some ways very sad that we can't do it here because that makes the most sense. But for me, has been to be able to work across the region, across South Asia. That really, really has been has been life-changing for me. It really, because it makes the most sense. And the other thing, the last thing, is to see the resonances across histories, across political struggles, across cultures. It is, to discover all the entanglements and the binds that we have and continue to have across the South, which just makes you more determined to do the work that needs to be done.
Can I quickly just say one thing? This idea about being able to work with South Asia when you're outside of it. The last time we were able to go to India was when Mrs. Hashmi made visas happen for us. We had to step up and we have to fight the fight. It wasn't easy then too, I'm sure, but there was, right now it's very hard. But I guess one of the things I want to say is that we can't wait around for things to open for us. We have to find avenues, and if that means पिछली गली से निकल के किताबें पहुंचा दो type वाली बात, we have to do that instead of sitting and saying we can't work with them because the official channels don't allow.
That's really actually a very sage advice, and also yes, those were days when we had people like Mrs. Hashmi who were championing for us and for this kind of movement, which is quite sad. I do have other questions, but I feel like I should open it up.
Can I just add one more
Yes,
thing?
please.
And this is, Mrs. Hashmi, this is an ode to you. I have to say, and of course most of you know this, but there's never enough acknowledgement. And the thing is that what you've been able to do at BNU and bring people from the SAARC countries. I have now worked with artists who studied at BNU, who are from Kabul, from Srinagar, and it is really, it really is invaluable. And to continue to hold that space, I think and these artists also are, forever grateful. Of course you know this, but it also means so much. I can't express it enough.
Thank you. And thank both of you. We are not finishing. I'm going to take one or two questions. I had many questions to ask. We had decided, but it looks like we don't have time.
फिर से बुला लेना, कोई बात नहीं.
Exactly. आपको फिर से आना पड़ेगा. That's just how it's going to have to be. So if there are any questions, yes. All right. We'll start with Mrs. Hashmi and then Abdullah. What's going on? So please could someone give the mic to Mrs. Hashmi? Yaha, please. Yeah, maybe I could.
Sorry, Abdullah. Age before beauty. Firstly, just an ode to you, the three of you, because this has been so enriching, and I'm tremendously grateful for this session. A question that I do have, and both of you in a way have kind of referred to it in a weak manner, that when one is away from the center, and right now I'm considering South Asia to be the center, there are so many things that actually come between you and the center, and which is something that one grapples with. The first thing, of course, is we in South Asia can't talk to one another in terms of our work, because the governments have made sure that we cannot work with one another. And so it becomes doubly, a big burden for you who work outside the region and want to speak about the region and within the region. Are there any strategies, because I want to learn from you, frankly, are there any strategies that you've developed as to how to circumvent the boys with the toys?
It's really interesting because the last 2 years I've been working with a lot of wonderful individuals in India, who are placed within India, who are publishing and distributing extensively, and I had wonderful friends in Pakistan, and that's kind of shut down. And COVID has allowed us to kind of, the Zoom conversation now makes sense. Before we felt it was cold, now we know it's necessary that these platforms, these conversations are happening. One of the sessions that I had about 6 months ago was how do you figure out trade when the government doesn't allow book trade? And we talked about taking things in our suitcases for people who can travel. Because while books should be the most dangerous thing they should be checking in suitcases, they don't. And if you're able to even carry 5 books with you, you are able to do something. There's tons of us. I have a Brazilian passport, that has allowed me to go to Pakistan. Right now, my Pakistan origin doesn't allow me to go, but then I meet those friends. I host them in Dubai all the time. I'm happy to take your books with me to Dubai. This was a session that was attended by a lot of independent publishers, People Press and all online, so not the artist community. But really, to be mules is the circumvention that we figured out, is the way right now when the official structures don't allow it.
Yeah, I think on this I come back to a point, Saira, you mentioned earlier, and Mrs. Ashmi also noted that it's a burden on many fronts, because suddenly you are a representative of the entire region where you're still struggling to make space for your own. And I think so one, of course, these cross exchanges, like Saira shared that, also readings and works, and I'm just remembering Naeem Mohiman just recently took out this book called Midnight's Third Child about Bangladesh, about the 3 transitions from being the part of, subcontinent, and then East Pakistan, and then Bangladesh. And I remember the idea was that the book has to be shared here because it is connected. But his publisher, who's from Bangladesh, and his gallery in India said, oh, if you take it to Pakistan, then your coming to India would not be possible anymore. But now, how do we do this? I think with guerrilla action, partly to just share and disseminate. I would say, one is this, but on a more formal level, what my strategy so far, and I'm still learning because I think there's no one way to go about it, and we keep trying in whichever way we do. But if, whenever I am in contact, I always, try to cross-connect, but also whenever I have to nominate, I'm very conscious that it is not just representation from one part, but across. Because I think it's very important for people to also come together, and this has been a way of people, of course, practices getting noticed, but also especially in residency instances, it also has been a way of people coming together. And then once again, when you meet, thankfully Berlin also is passing through for people, and so it's also just sharing of practices, just sharing and pushing and saying, oh, you need to look at this, you need to look at this. So across the region, so it's not formally, I think it's much slower, of course, because now opportunities and fundings are becoming more and more restricted, but I think informally it continues to function, and I think is only going to increase with initiatives that go on the ground, which is going to be the next method, which is happening already, but I think that is also the future. Because, sorry.
Thank you, Hajra. They need the hall, but Abdullah, can we please shift the conversation outside? It doesn't have to end. It can just be relocated outside the hall. Also, before you leave, I would, I know there's quite a militant, unfortunately, but can I just remind you all that at 2:30, Hajra will be back here speaking about Columbus Stroke 2026, so please join us for that. She's going to be speaking at length about this very exciting venture that's happening and this seminal thing. So thank you again, Hajra and Saira. Thank you all for being here. Please continue the conversation.